Unsung Murder Ballads discusses topics of a disturbing nature.
And we're not going to hold back on the graphic details and disturbing content.
So we do not recommend our podcast for children under the age of 13.
And while we respect the victims and their families involved in these tragic cases,
we're also going to be critical of mistakes that are made during the investigations.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So with that said, this podcast may not be for everyone.
And that's okay. We're glad you're here checking us out.
And if you've made it this far, welcome to the Unsung Murder Ballads family. And follow us on Instagram at Unsung Murder Ballads if you want to talk to us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 62. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And welcome back to our very first ever Saturday episode.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I'm sure you guys heard just a couple days ago, Joyous and I did our first episode where we split into 2 a week. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. So let us know your feedback. Let us know how you think we're doing. And don't forget to give us your case recommendations. Those are huge.
Yeah, we love hearing those recommendations.
We do. I got to be honest. They're some of my favorite stuff. Like every time, especially if I don't already know the case, which has happened most of them. Yeah.
It's rare, though. You're normally a pretty good know-it-all when it comes to most of these.
That's because I spend far too much of my time researching and watching videos and listening to podcasts.
And how many watch lists are you on?
Yeah, I'm probably far too many. So, tonight, we're going to be discussing 3 cases, 2 very short and 1 a little long. So it's sort of like a bite-sized murder kind of thing. But these are grouped together because they all involve professional wrestlers.
Oh, yes. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, so for the record, for anyone out there, I am not a fan of professional wrestling, whether it's the Olympics or the WWE. I just never got into it. I shouldn't say never. I liked it back at like WrestleMania 3 when Hulk Hogan fought Andre the Giant. That's my wrestling experience.
All right. Well, yeah, I definitely, I'm a big fan, and I followed it for many years. So I'm very interested and invested in these cases to come.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, you'll recognize 2 of the people involved. One of them, you could probably guess which one I'm going to cover.
Yeah, I won't say anything though.
Right. The other one, I know you know this person. Anyone who even liked wrestling in the 80s knows who this person is. The first one we're going to cover, I don't know if you'll know him because I'm not actually sure he wrestled with the WWE, but he was a wrestler and he committed a murder. So we're going to talk about him.
Let's do it.
His name is Brian McGee. Do you recognize that one?
I feel like I should, but keep going.
Okay, so he was a former wrestler that was charged with murder after he allegedly stabbed a woman in a Tampa apartment, according to Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
And Brian McGee, who was 29, fled the apartment complex after the stabbing, which occurred at approximately 8:30 p.m. on that night. The apartment complex was located at 8451 Del Lago Circle in Tampa. Deputies arrived, and they discovered a female victim had been stabbed multiple times. She died at the scene as a result of her injuries. His girlfriend's name was Bianca McGarry. Her identity was initially withheld. Yeah, and initially it was withheld because they didn't want her family to find out that she died before they could contact her.
Okay, well that makes sense.
Yep. So McGee fled in a car, and his vehicle was spotted and being pursued by the Hillsborough deputies, and he was flying down the highway. And this chase ended at Interstate 75 and County Line Road in Pasco County, where he had crashed his car.
Oh, boy.
He was transported to the St. Joseph's Hospital in Tampa for treatment, and when he was released, he was, of course, charged with murder. Hello.
Yeah, go figure.
So what makes it even weirder, or not weirder, but more fucked up, is about 30 minutes after the stabbing was reported, he updated his Facebook profile picture.
What?
To a picture of his arm cut with a bloody wound.
Oh, God, that's damning.
Yeah. Friends and family left messages on there to contact them and to do the right thing.
That pretty much signals guilt.
So McGee wrestled under the names Donovan Rudick, D.T. Porter, and he also went by the nickname The Future. Does that ring any bells?
He doesn't have much of one now.
No, he does not. Apparently, he started his wrestling career in 2006, and in 2009, Pro Wrestling Illustrated ranked him as number 476 out of 500 best single wrestlers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and at that time, he signed with the WWE, and in 2012, his contract had ended, according to his Facebook page. So he didn't have much of a career, and he did once serve in the Navy from 2002 to 2004, before, here we are, eventually him killing his girlfriend.
That's a hell of a decline.
Yeah, that's sad. McGee was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
And that's all we have on Brian McGee. Okay, the next one, I know you're going to know at least the name of the person, and maybe you'll know the actual case.
Okay.
Superfly Snuka.
Yes. Yep. I know this one.
Okay, I had no idea that he was involved in anything like this.
Uh-huh. Isn't this insane?
It's fucking nuts. So Snuka was born in the British colony of Fiji on May 18th, 1943, to parents Louisa Smith and Charles Thomas. Thomas was married to another woman, and Smith was engaged to someone named Bernard Ryler. Before Snuka was born, his mother married the Ryler guy. As a child, Snuka moved with his family to the Marshall Islands and then to Hawaii. Snuka was active in amateur bodybuilding in Hawaii in the 1960s, and he also enjoyed some success as a professional bodybuilder, earning him the titles of Mr. Hawaii, Mr. Waikiki, and Mr. North Shore.
Wow, I didn't know those ones.
That's pretty cool. Now, Snuka wrestled for several promotions in the 1970s through the 2010s. Okay, and we kind of know where this is going. We should know some of this history.
Correct.
He is best known for his time at the World Wrestling Federation, now known as the WWE, back in the 1980s, and to his credit, he introduced what was called the high-flying wrestling style.
Yep.
He was inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame in 1996 and was the inaugural ECW World Heavyweight Champion, a title he held twice in Eastern Championship Wrestling. Later, that it became Extreme Championship Wrestling. Wow. I had no idea about any of this.
Yeah, no, he had quite a storied wrestling career.
So he has two children, Sim Snuka and Tamina Snuka, and they are both also professional wrestlers.
Yes, they are.
There is obviously a lot more I could say about his wrestling career, but hey, that's not why we're here today. So in 2015, WWE legend Jimmy Snuka was arrested on charges of third-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. This was determined by the Lehigh County Grand Jury after an investigation conducted by the Morning Call determined that sufficient evidence existed for a trial. Now, the incident occurred nearly 32 years before the indictment.
Yep.
On that date, Nancy Argentino, the girlfriend of Snuka, was declared dead at the Lehigh Valley Hospital. The hospital received a call for an ambulance from Snuka when he came back from the motel and found Argentino injured. She was struggling to breathe and oozing yellow fluid from her nose and her mouth.
Oh, God.
Emergency personnel were dispatched immediately, but unfortunately the injuries were too severe and Argentino died within a few hours. She was only 23 years old.
Holy crud.
Yeah, baby.
I didn't realize she was that young.
Yeah, she was a baby. As per the autopsy report, Argentino died due to traumatic brain injuries and was injured 12 to 24 hours before the call for an ambulance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy hell.
Moreover, she had suffered a number of cuts and bruises, and the coroner mentioned that there were some signs of foul play that had taken place. It was suggested that the case be treated as a homicide until proven otherwise, but no charges were pressed at the time.
Oh, wow.
Now,
that's crazy.
Now, the case, however, was not officially ruled either way and remained open. Another incriminating piece of evidence was the conflict in the reports of the investigators. One investigator stated that Snuka was cooperative throughout the process, but another investigator mentioned that Vince McMahon, Snuka's boss, served as a mouthpiece for Snuka himself, and that Snuka did not have much to say, although he did give his account of how Argentino was injured. And we all know what's up with fucking Vince McMahon right now.
I was going to say, having Vince talk for me if I were him, no way.
Yeah, at the time he had no idea, but this motherfucker, holy, that's a whole other thing. We wouldn't cover it because there's no murder yet, but holy fuck. Okay, so Snuka said that Argentino had slipped near the guardrail and had struck her head, but he did not think much of it at the time, and he continued to drive away and go on with whatever he had going on that night, which was taping for WWE. So when he came back from that taping, he found her in like this catatonic state, like this injured state, and that's when he called for an ambulance. Argentino's family hired a lawyer to take another look on the case, and they found enough evidence to take the matter before a grand jury and turn it into a murder case. Now, the district attorney, William Platt, was not convinced, and he had the criminal case stalled.
Oh, okay.
So in 1985, Argentino's family was awarded a default judgment of $500,000 in a wrongful death suit, but Snuka filed an affidavit to the effect stating that he was broke and he couldn't possibly pay that. So his own attorney withdrew from the case, citing that they hadn't been paid and that Snuka was actually bankrupt.
Yeah, I can definitely believe that.
Now this brings us to 2015. The criminal case was reopened when the doctor who conducted the autopsy commented that the facts surrounding the case were very worrisome and suspicious. This led to the aforementioned investigation, and upon the recommendation of the grand jury, the district attorney charged Jimmy Snuka. Snuka pleaded not guilty to the charges, and the trial was set to begin, but Snuka's competency to stand trial was brought into question. His attorney stated that his mental and physical health was worsening. The former pro wrestler was diagnosed with stomach cancer in August of 2015, and later in 2016, his attorney notified the press that his client was diagnosed with dementia as a result of injuries sustained in his wrestling career. It's a sad end for a great wrestler.
It seriously is, and you can see this happen to a bunch of them. It takes an incredible toll. You know, you can definitely see them wither away physically, but the mental side of it is also a huge thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. I'm sure there's a lot of steroids involved.
Oh, yeah.
So the prosecutor brought evidence that demonstrated that Snuka was performing wrestling moves in a match for that same year, trying to dispute the claims that he had dementia. Moreover, expert evidence from a psychologist suggested that Snuka may have been faking his symptoms.
Oh, Jesus.
Yep. So the defense brought forward a forensic pathologist who testified that Snuka was, quote, a shell of a man, unquote, and his mental health had deteriorated to the point where he could not comprehend simple questions and therefore could not stand trial. The presiding judge ruled Snuka unfit to stand trial in June of 2016. In the fall of that year, Snuka's attorney notified the court that his client was given 6 months to live due to his terminal illness. Ultimately, the homicide charges were dismissed as Snuka was deemed unfit to stand trial.
Damn.
I don't know how I feel about that.
That's all it took for them to be dismissed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that the evidence was pretty strong. I don't know. Obviously, at this point, I wasn't even paying attention to that because I didn't know about this until I started researching wrestler murderers. So in July of 2016, Carol Snuka, acting as representative for her husband, joined a class action lawsuit filed against the WWE, which alleged that wrestlers incurred long-term neurological injuries and that the company routinely failed to care for them and fraudulently misrepresented and concealed the nature and extent of those injuries. The lawsuit is litigated by attorney Konstantin Kairos, who had been involved in a number of other lawsuits against the WWE. According to court documents filed by Kairos, in November of 2016, Snuka was diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy. WWE challenged the filing, stating that no medical report was included. And then since the September 2007 autopsy on Chris Benoit that detected that he had CTE, the Kairos law firm had represented over 60 wrestlers or estates of deceased wrestlers, including Carol Snuka, in litigation against the WWE. And obviously, Chris Benoit is the person we're going to talk about next.
Yes, it is.
So the lawsuit was dismissed by the U.S. District Judge Vanessa Lynn Bryant in September of 2018. Snuka passed away in 2017 due to his terminal illness. Jimmy Snuka was a pioneer of the olden days of professional wrestling. He had a plethora of epic matches to his credit, but his involvement in the death of Nancy Argentino was also undeniable. Nobody truly knows what happened that night, as the case was never adjudicated upon, but the tragic incident later became the subject of an episode of The Dark Side of the Ring, which I'm sure that's how you know it if you didn't know it otherwise.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I know a lot of people who watch that show. A lot of people have told me to watch it. I just don't like wrestling enough to care. That's my problem.
Yeah, you got to be a real fan. You got to want to know what's going on behind the scenes and want to know the intricacies of all this kinds of stuff. And if you're not a fan, you're not going to like it.
I mean, I might like the murder part because I'm a true crime fanatic, but mostly I just don't care. Like, I hate to say it, like, as a kid, I loved it because I thought it was real, you know, back when Roddy Piper was hitting people with chairs.
Yeah, of course.
But once I was a teenager, it just lost its appeal for me. And then as an adult and how fake it is, like, I have friends who watch it, and I sat down one night while a friend of mine had it on the television, and I got maybe 5 to 15 minutes in, and I'm like, this is just a big soap opera drama. What the fuck is going on? So, although this friend recently just told me that there was a time period from like the late 90s to the mid 2000s where it was not appropriate for children.
Correct.
And I'm like, come on, it's fucking wrestling. I guarantee you kids across the country were still watching it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And that was the excitement of it, is because you knew it wasn't for kids. So that's like, don't hit the big red shiny button.
Yeah, I get that, but, how many shitty parents were letting their kids watch wrestling then? I don't know. It's weird to me. So, Chris Benoit. Now, keep in mind, I just want everyone to know, this is honestly should have been done a different way. I knew nothing about Chris Benoit or anything that had happened until I just got it randomly in my head to look up wrestling murders.
Really?
I knew dick.
Wow.
Because, I mean, idea.
Even as a fair weather wrestling fan, I feel like this was everywhere.
And it may have been, and maybe I like vaguely heard about it.
Yeah.
But I was like, I had no idea. Before looking at photos, I couldn't have told you what Chris Benoit even looked like, because I never saw a match with him in it, because he was well after my time.
Oh, yeah.
So Chris Benoit was born in Montreal, Quebec, the son of Michael and Margaret Benoit. He grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, from where he was billed throughout the bulk of his career. He had a sister who lived near Edmonton. During his childhood and early adolescence, Benoit idolized Tom Dynamite Kid Billington and Bret Hart. Now, those names I recognize.
Okay, good.
So at 12 years old, he attended a local wrestling event at which the two performers, quote, stood out above everyone else, unquote. Benoit trained and became a professional wrestler in the Hart family dungeon, receiving education from family patriarch Stu Hart. I have no idea who that is.
So Stu Hart was the father of Bret and Owen Hart, and he had the wrestling dungeon where all big name wrestlers who came into the industry, they basically learned everything down there. Okay. They trained with Stu, learned the do's and don'ts, and got their start there, and then made their way up to the big leagues.
Now, isn't Hart one of the people that fell from the rafters?
Yes, Owen Hart was the one who ended up falling to his death during a pay-per-view because the safety harness was not applied correctly, and he fell 75 feet to the ring.
Right. I remember that. I don't really remember if I watched Owen Hart. I remember Bret Hart. Weren't they a tag team back in the late 80s?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I do remember him. The ones that stand out the most in my head, obviously Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Roddy Piper, and the Barber Beefcake, whatever his name was. Those are the ones that I remember like to this day. And the animal guy who ate the turnbuckle.
Okay, yep.
And there was another guy who ran around with a 2x4. Those are the ones I remember.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah, those are the ones I remember. So.
Yep, all good guys in their respective characters, and they all definitely had a role to play in the industry. So
right. All right, so back to this. So in the ring, Benoit emulated both Billington and Bret Hart, cultivating a high-risk style and physical appearance more reminiscent of the former, of Bret Hart, after he adopted Hart's own sharpshooter hold as a finishing move. I don't even know what that means.
So basically, he crumples up his legs like a pretzel and makes them submit, putting extreme pressure on your lower back, making it incredibly uncomfortable.
So Benoit began his career in '85 in Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling promotion. According to Benoit, in his first match, he attempted the diving headbutt before learning how to land correctly and had the wind knocked out of him.
If you ever go back and look at clips, many professionals and many fans have said that move in and of itself was definitely one of the reasons or one of the leading factors in his CTE.
Interesting. So he said he would never do that move again at that point.
Lies.
And the first title Benoit ever won was the Stampede British Commonwealth Mid-Heavyweight Championship in March 18th, 1988 against Gamma Singh. During his tenure in Stampede, he won 4 international tag team and 3 more British Commonwealth titles. Is this fake at this point, or is this legit?
No, so at this point in that stage, it was a little bit more legit than later on.
Okay. So in 1989, Stampede closed its doors, and with a recommendation from Bad News Allen, Benoit departed for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Upon arriving in New Japan Pro Wrestling, Benoit spent about a year training in their New Japan dojo with the younger wrestlers to kind of hone his abilities. While there, he came into his own as a performer in critically acclaimed matches with luminaries such as Justin Thunder Liger, Black Tiger, and El Samurai in their junior heavyweight division. In August of 1990, he won his first major championship, the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. Now, 4 years later, in August of 94, Benoit began working with the Extreme Championship Wrestling in between tours of Japan. He was booked as a dominant wrestler there, gaining notoriety as the Crippler after he put Rocco Rock out. In his first appearance, Benoit competed in a one-night, 8-man tournament in the vacant NWA World Heavyweight Championship, losing in the quarterfinals match. So much of this is like me reading a fucking stereo instructions. I have no idea what I'm even talking about. At an event called November to Remember, Benoit accidentally broke wrestler Sabu's neck within the opening seconds of the match. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. And Sabu was in ECW, and he was known as one of the more hardcore wrestlers. So to have Benoit go and do that, pretty impressive.
Okay. Wow. So the injury came when Benoit threw Sabu with the intention that he take a face-first pancake bump, but Sabu attempted to turn mid-air and take the backdrop bump instead. He did not fully achieve the full rotation and landed almost directly on his neck.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
After that match, Benoit returned to the locker room and reportedly broke down over the possibility that he may have paralyzed somebody. Paul Heyman, the head booker at the ECW at the time, came up with the idea of continuing the Crippler moniker for Benoit. From that point until his departure from the ECW, he was known as Crippler Benoit, which is so fucked up.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
When he returned to the WCW in October of 95, WCW modified his ring name to the Canadian Crippler, Chris Benoit. He was forced to leave the ECW after his work visa expired. Heyman was supposed to renew it, but he failed to make it on time, so Benoit left the ECW in August of 95 as a matter of job security and his ability to enter the United States. He toured Japan until WCW called him again. New Japan Pro Wrestling and the World Championship Wrestling, this WCW, had a working relationship because of their talent exchange program. Benoit signed with the WCW in late 95. After impressing higher-ups with his work, he was approached by Ric Flair and the WCW booking staff to become a member of the reformed Four Horsemen in 95.
Yeah, one of the most iconic groups.
The only name in there I recognize is Ric Flair.
I figured as much.
Yeah. Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman were the other two. I don't recognize them. And of course, Ric Flair with his trademark woo that I'm not even going to attempt to do. For the record, there's an old video, if I can ever find it, of Betty Dead of the Dead Deads trying to do the woo, and she fails so miserably, and she literally just looks at the camera and she's like, yeah, that was my sad Ric Flair impersonation.
That's incredible.
It's funny. If I can find the video, I'll show it to everybody.
Okay.
So Benoit was placed into a scripted, ongoing feud with someone named Kevin Sullivan. The two would have violent confrontations at pay-per-views, which led to Sullivan demanding a match with Benoit, essentially claiming that Benoit was having an affair with Sullivan's real-life wife and on-screen valet, Nancy, also known as Woman. Do you remember that?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I do.
So Benoit and Nancy were forced to spend time together to make the affair look real, like holding hands in public, sharing hotel rooms, etc. This on-screen relationship developed into a real-life affair off-screen, which is fucking nuts.
That's how a lot of these marriages and relationships happened.
I just think it's crazy, though. Like, what are the odds that they're playing this character and then it happens? But who knows how big a dick Sullivan was? I don't know.
Yeah, he was kind of an ass.
Well, the fact that her nickname is Woman kind of suggests that it wasn't a great situation, even if it was just fake for a character.
Right, exactly.
As a result, Sullivan and Benoit actually had a contentious backstage relationship at best and an undying hatred for each other at its worst. Benoit, however, did admit to having a certain amount of respect for Sullivan, saying on the DVD Hard Knocks, the Chris Benoit story, that Sullivan never took undue liberties in the ring during their feud, even though he blamed Benoit for breaking up his marriage.
As much as you may hate that person, you have to keep them safe in the ring.
Oh, obviously, yeah. Because otherwise...
Because, I mean, you could take a liberty and just be like, okay, I'm going to throw you at an awkward angle.
A little too hard, yeah.
Yeah.
That would become assault, especially in a fake environment.
Yeah, exactly.
So one last attempt in January of 2000 was made to try to keep him with the WCW by putting the vacant WCW World Heavyweight Championship on him by defeating Sid Vicious. However, due to disagreements with management and to protest the promotion of Kevin Sullivan to head booker, Benoit left the company the next day alongside others, forfeiting his title in the process. WCW then refused to acknowledge Benoit's victory as an official title reign, and Benoit's title reign was not listed in the title lineage at WCW.com. And I can only imagine that that's completely not there now.
Well, yeah, they pretty much tried to erase any history of him. You know, he's kind of blacklisted, and everybody, you know, like, it's like saying Voldemort. Like, you don't say Benoit.
That's funny because you made another reference of something I've never watched or read. I only know who Voldemort is because of everybody else talking about him.
Okay, then.
Yeah. However, the WWF, as it was known at the time, recognized Benoit's title win, and Benoit's title reign was still listed as a title in the title lineage at WWE.com. Benoit spent the next few years in Japan before heading to the WWF, who acknowledged his reign, as we just mentioned. Benoit wrestled in his first WWF pay-per-view main event, challenging The Rock for the WWF Championship. Wow. It's interesting.
Now, you got to know who The Rock is.
Obviously,
at least.
He's the actor.
Okay.
I know.
All right.
I knew he came from wrestling. I'm just being funny. but I never watched him wrestle. So there's that. So Benoit would win the Intercontinental title 3 times between April of 2000 and January of 2001. Benoit missed a year of wrestling due to a neck injury in 2001 and 2002, like that area. During the first WWF draft, he was the 3rd wrestler picked by Vince McMahon to be part of the new SmackDown roster, although still on the injured list. Benoit had a successful career in wrestling and for the next 5 years participated in matches with many other famous wrestlers. In terms of Benoit's personal life, Benoit spoke both English and French fluently. He married twice and had 2 children, David and Megan, with his first wife, Martina. In 1997, that marriage broke down, and Benoit was living with Nancy Sullivan, the wife of frequent opponent Kevin Sullivan. On February 25th, 2000, Chris and Nancy's son Daniel was born, and then later that year in November, the two got married. This was Nancy's 3rd marriage. In 2003, Nancy filed for divorce from Benoit, citing the marriage as irrevocably broken and alleging cruel treatment. She claimed that he would break and throw furniture around, which again, these guys were all doing fucking steroids. I can only imagine most of them were doing shit like that.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
She later dropped the suit as well as the restraining order that she had filed against him. In 2007, Benoit missed the weekend house shows, telling the WWE officials that his wife and son were vomiting blood due to food poisoning. When he failed to show up for the pay-per-view, viewers were informed that he was unable to due to a family emergency, and he was replaced in the title match by Johnny Nitro, who won the match and became the ECW World Champion. The crowd spent the majority of the match chanting for Benoit. On June 25, 2007, police entered Benoit's home in Fayetteville, Georgia, after a request for a welfare check to be done after Benoit missed weekend events without notice, leading to concerns. The officers discovered the bodies of Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their 7-year-old son Daniel at 2:30 p.m. Upon investigating, no additional suspects were sought by authorities. WWE canceled the scheduled 3-hour-long live Raw show on June 25th and replaced the broadcast version with a 3-hour tribute to Benoit's life and career featuring his past matches, segments from the Hard Knocks, the Chris Benoit story DVD, and comments from wrestlers and announcers.
Now imagine being the people putting that together, not knowing things beforehand.
The whole thing's crazy. The fans must have been fucking devastated.
Oh, I'm sure.
So then it was determined soon after that Benoit had committed the murders. Over a 3-day period, Benoit had killed his wife and son before committing suicide. His wife was bound before being killed. Benoit's son was drugged with Xanax and likely unconscious before Benoit strangled him. Benoit then committed suicide by hanging himself on his latch pull-down machine. Toxicology reports released on July 17, 2007, revealed that at the time of their death, Nancy had 3 different drugs in her system: Xanax, hydrocodone, and hydromorphone, all of which were found at the therapeutic rather than toxic levels. So she wasn't like fucked up on that stuff. Benoit was found to have Xanax, hydrocodone, and an elevated level of testosterone caused by the synthetic form of the hormone in his system, so basically steroids. The chief medical examiner attributed the testosterone level to Benoit possibly being treated for a deficiency caused by the previous steroid abuse or testicular insufficiency. There is no indication that anything in Benoit's body contributed to his violent behavior that led to the murder-suicide, concluding that there was no roid rage involved, which I have a hard time believing. But hey,
you see, everybody, there are conflicting thoughts on this. Everybody says, "Oh, he must have been in a roid rage. He must have, been on this, have been on that." And then on the other side of the coin, a bunch of people think it's the CTE.
That's true too. I don't know personally. I don't know any of it. Other than having put this together very quickly, these notes, this is all very new and very foreign to me. So prior to the murder-suicide, Benoit had illegally been given medication not in compliance with WWE's Talent Wellness Program in February of 2006, including nandrolone, an antibiotic steroid, and anastrozole, a breast cancer medication which is used by bodybuilders for its powerful anti-estrogenic effects. Wow. That's fucked up.
I didn't know that one. That's wow.
Yeah, that's fucked up. So during the investigation into steroid abuse, it was revealed that other wrestlers had also been given steroids. After the double murder-suicide, former wrestler Christopher Nowinski contacted Michael Benoit, Chris's father, suggesting that years of trauma on his son's brain may have led to his actions. Tests were conducted on Benoit's brain by Julian Bales, the head of neurosurgery at West Virginia University, and results showed that Benoit's brain was so severely damaged it resembled the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Fucked up.
Yeah, isn't that insane?
Fucked up. Holy shit. He was reported to have had advanced form dementia, similar to the brain of 4 retired NFL players who had multiple concussions, sank into depression, and harmed themselves or others. Bales and his colleagues concluded that repeated concussions can lead to dementia, which can contribute to severe behavioral problems. Benoit's father suggests that brain damage may have been the leading cause of what happened. Once the details of Benoit's action became apparent, WWE made the decision to remove nearly all mentions of Chris Benoit from their website, future broadcasts, and all publications. Which you've already said. And that is the case of Chris Benoit, which wraps up our crazy wrestling night.
You learned a whole lot tonight, didn't you?
I did. And this is funny because it was almost similar to what we did with Joyous the other night, where she had to read a script that she had no idea what the hell was going to happen.
Yeah, I remember the Chris case the most, obviously. What they also, I don't believe we mentioned, Benoit had a finishing move called the crippling crossface, where he would lock his hands together and pull back on your neck.
Oh, Jesus.
And it was reported that he allegedly used that on his son.
Wow. Holy shit. No, I didn't see that.
Whether or not it actually happened, I mean, there were conflicting reports, but in the state that he was in, I wouldn't put it past him.
Which is crazy because, now it makes sense why. I mean, I'm sure The Rock, Dwayne Johnson is getting paid a shit ton of money, more money to do like movies and shit, but it makes sense why he wanted out. And now I'm wondering, I look back at someone like The Undertaker, who is like 112 years old and keeps going back. Like to me, that blows my mind. I'm sure he's not actually wrestling. I'm sure he's just there to fucking scare the shit out of kids.
Yeah.
But like, Jesus Christ. It's crazy to me.
But there are real life situations where, like with Snuka, they don't have money or they owe people money or something.
Oh, I believe it.
They just keep going.
Maybe now, like if I'm ever at a Comic-Con again and there's a professional wrestler there, like Jake the Snake shows up at these things occasionally, maybe I'll ask them some questions. They may not answer them, but maybe I'll do it.
Yeah, they love talking about their history and matches and stuff that went on behind the scenes. I've met a decent amount of wrestlers in person, and most of them are really down-to-earth guys.
Yeah, that's cool. Like I said, for me, most of them are probably so old that the only thing they can do are, Comic-Cons.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us. This was episode 62. Yeah, I'll see you all in a handful of days, but Jameson will see you in a week.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so thank you once again. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Jameson Dead.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.